morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, September 16 here in Manila. I'm Karen Davila giving you the head start for the day. Our guest for Hot Copy today, this is a rare live interview. I think that people have been asking, why hasn't he been invited to actually speak in the Senate hearings on the MRT issue? MRTC Chairman and CEO Robert Sobrepena is here with us, the private company that owns MRT. He'll be talking about the train system's woes, what led to these problems, who should be buying the trains in the first place, and what is government's role or ownership of MRT. Tweet your questions. First, the headlines this morning. Copy, the government is keen on taking over the MRT3 amidst a horde of challenges hounding the Metro Manila's rail system. But MRT Corporation, or MRTC, warns it will take more than a takeover to address these problems. Take a look.
With a growing demand for safe and reliable mass transport and the recent problems hounding the transportation industry and the MRT system, President Aquino has directed Transportation Secretary June Abaya to take all steps necessary to ensure the safety and reliability of MRT3 and LRT1 and 2. After the problems posed by the Supreme Court ruling on the disbursement acceleration program and in anticipation of fresh funding next year, government says it plans to buy out the MRT system for an estimated 53 billion pesos. A compromise agreement is set to be presented to MRT Corporation this month. Government is also prepared to face MRTC at pending arbitration proceedings in Singapore early next year. The palace says Abaya recently presented to the President the DOTC's plans for the MRT, including purchases and repairs, totaling 2.58 billion pesos. Beginning September next year, 48 brand new coaches are set to arrive, increasing the capacity of MRT3 by 66% and improving travel time. Several other improvements are also lined up, many of which are expected to be completed by next year. But MRT Corporation says the government takeover of the MRT system will not solve safety issues hounding the MRT3. The DOTC is now looking for potential bidders for the 2.2 billion three-year maintenance service contract for the facility.
All right, joining us in the studio, this is his first live television interview regarding the MRT. MRTC Corporation Chairman Robert John Sobrepena, or Bob Sobrepena as he's more well known, is here with us in the studio. Welcome to Hot Copy.
Hi, thank you.
Let me call you Bob instead.
Sure,
okay.
Please.
Now, I want to ask you first.
Yeah.
There's been talk about the government wanting to buy back MRT. Has anyone from the government spoken with you, met with you, talked with you about actually buying back the MRT?
Karen, actually, no. Nobody's actually talked to us, written to us, communicated any offer to buy. The only thing we know about it is what we read in the papers of their intentions.
So Secretary Abaya has not called you?
No, has not called us.
Not met with you?
No.
Even on the problems regarding MRT today?
Even on the problems, yeah.
So you are not in communication?
No, we're actually completely cut off, out of the loop. And that's a big problem, and that is why we're in the situation we're in.
Why would they cut you off the loop?
I'm not sure. I mean, we used to attend their meetings every month, 2012 and before that. All the maintenance meetings, we were part of it.
Yeah.
Sumitomo Mitsubishi, our maintenance provider, was doing, I think, an excellent job at maintaining it. We didn't have all these problems then. We were in the loop. We were coordinated. But after 2012, when DOTC appointed another maintenance provider,
which is APT,
which is initially PH Trams.
Okay, yeah.
We were cut off the loop.
Okay.
We couldn't inspect. We were never part of the meetings, so we lost contact with the operations.
Okay. Now, I want the public to understand, first, who owns MRTC? I think we have a graphics on this. This is for the benefit of our viewers. Let's treat this like it were a Senate hearing since yours was canceled yesterday. So, who owns MRTC, and exactly how much does government own, and what is government's role in MRTC?
Yes, yes, actually, as you can see in the graph, MRTC is owned by several private companies.
Okay.
Astoria, which is really owned by the Ayala Group.
Okay.
Anglo-Phil, which is owned by the National Bookstore Group. Railco Investments, Inc., which is owned by Ramcar Group. Phil Estate, our own company, and then Sheridan, which is the United Lab Group, Greenfields and United Lab, and then 2 minority shareholders, Emerging Allied and DBH Group.
Yeah. Okay, so it's quite interesting that apparently it's not just your company, that not just the Sobrepena Group owns MRTC,
No.
but you do have many other companies that own it, including Ayala.
Yes.
I didn't
yes.
even know that, frankly.
Yes.
Okay, this is MRTC, not MRT Holdings.
Right.
Okay, MRTC ito.
Well,
what is MRT Holdings?
Let me explain.
Okay.
The company that owns MRTC is a company called MRT Holdings.
Yeah.
And MRT Holdings is the company that's owned by all these companies. So there's a holding company that owns 100% of MRTC.
Yeah.
And that holding company is owned by those companies, all these private companies.
So this particular graph you showed is MRT Holdings. Okay. Now moving down to MRTC, it's the same. They still own MRTC.
Yes.
Okay.
This company, MRT Holdings, owns 100% of MRTC.
Okay. Now, out of 15 board seats, apparently government has 9 on the board.
Correct.
So that would mean that I think my math is bad. So 6 would be private representatives, including yourself.
Yes, we actually have 5 board seats.
Okay.
They have 9 at this point.
So that's the interesting part. Explain this. Government has 9 board seats in MRTC, but not in MRT Holdings.
Correct.
So what does that mean? What does government own?
Okay. First of all, government is represented by 9 nominees from the GFIs, which is Land Bank and DBP.
Okay.
The reason they got in there was because they bought 80% of the bonds, the MRT bonds.
Okay. In what year?
This was in 2009. And so when they bought the bonds, along with it were the seats in MRTC. Now, MRTC owns the MRT3 project. Yeah. Owns and manages it.
Only that.
Only that.
Yeah,
that's the only
because there's MRT2 eh. So that would be MRT Holdings.
Okay, Holdings owns MRTC.
Yes.
Okay. And MRTC is the project company that owns MRT3, the whole system.
The whole system. Okay, go on. All right.
So it's material because government, in reality, controls MRTC, which actually owns and maintains the system. No, supposed to maintain the system.
Yeah. But when you say government owns MRTC, do they own the company or they only own what Senator Ralph Recto said on the show, this was a phone patch, the economic interests of MRTC? I need you to explain that.
Yeah. Okay, what government actually did was they bought 80% of the bonds, the MRT bonds. Now, all the revenues coming from the MRT3 system has actually been securitized or assigned to the bonds and the bondholders. And therefore, government actually owns 80% of the bonds and of the revenues.
Now, why did government want to own that? During GMA's time,
during GMA's time, well...
why did they want to own the bonds?
There were 2 reasons. One, it had a good return. Secondly, it was controlled and largely held by 2 foreign companies. Okay. Elliott and Goldman Sachs.
The bonds?
The bonds. And along with it, they had also nominees in our board. At that point, they got control of the board, and they actually took an arbitration case into Singapore against the Philippine government because of delayed payments of the equity rental payments.
Goldman Sachs?
Yes, Elliott and Goldman Sachs. So with that, government bought out the foreign funds and thereby taking out the threat on the arbitration.
So how much did government spend to buy out the bonds?
I'm not sure.
Okay, then.
Because that was really between Elliott, Goldman, and government. No, I'm not sure how much the figure was.
So in effect, what government bought was from Elliott and Goldman Sachs, but not from you?
No, not from us.
So these companies that you have shown on graphics, Ayala, National Bookstore Group, Ramcar, the Sobrepena Group, you still own MRTC, the company in full?
Yes, we still own it through holdings.
Through holdings,
through MRT Holdings, yes.
So why did government spend so much? What's the point?
Government bought the bonds to take out the foreign threat because of the arbitration, and at the same time, it now owns 80% of the bonds, which have a pretty good return. That's all with Land Bank and DBP.
Okay. Now, So the government, the interest of government were the economic interests because of
Yes.
the return of the bonds.
Yes, yes, that's it. That's all.
That's all.
Yeah.
Now the question now with is, who calls the shots on who buys the trains?
Right now, government does. DOTC, well, you see, this is the way the BLT is structured.
Yeah.
We build, we lease it for 25 years to government, and then it's transferred at the end of 25 years.
Yeah.
During this time, government operates it, okay? We are supposed to maintain it. Okay?
MRTC.
Yes, we are supposed to maintain it.
Yeah.
And then, of
But then
course,
they got another maintenance group.
but this is because they took over the maintenance.
Yeah.
In 2010, I believe. No? In 2010, they took over the maintenance. And since then, from 2010, they were extending Sumitomo Mitsubishi every 6 months, which is fine with us, until 2012,
Yeah.
when they actually had a new maintenance provider come in, PH Trams. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But I want to go back to this is because under the contract, you were the first, or if not one of the first PPPs
Yes.
during FDR's time.
Right.
You were supposed to get, not you personally, meaning the private companies,
companies,
that
yeah.
own MRT,
Yes.
you were supposed to get a return of 15% a
Correct,
year.
correct.
Was that too big? Some critics have said that's way too big, 15% a year?
Well, let's put it this way. When we started the system, constructing it, that is, in 97, the borrowing rate then was about 16 to 17%.
It was very big.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now it's at 6 or sometimes
Right.
even 4. Yeah.
And when we completed the system in 2000, turned it over, when government started paying the bonds, at the same time, government actually issued a 25-year bond, the same length as our BLT, for 18%.
Oh,
Okay, so they actually were borrowing money at 18%
Yeah.
in year 2000 for 25 years, no, term. And so our 15% is actually lower than what government was borrowing
yeah.
at that time. So
Now, has government been up to date with the lease payments with MRTC? Does government still owe you money?
government still owes the bondholders now
Yeah.
money coming from the revenues and their subsidies. Let's just say they make the bond payments on time. One thing I would just like to highlight, though, is this. The 15% is not an interest rate. It's called an internal rate of return. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's different in this sense. It doesn't come per annum, annually, like the bonds, 18% per annum.
Yeah.
The internal rate of return, we're actually back-ended. The private sector only gets paid from year 2010 to year 2025. So if I gave you a proposition,
Yeah.
Karen, I don't think you'd invest if, for the first 10 years, you wouldn't get any money back.
Yeah.
You would only get your money back from year 2011 to year 2025.
Yes.
Right? That's such a long term. So that's the difference.
But then what did you do? Because after 10 years, government already bought 80% of
Exactly.
the bonds.
So actually, at the time when the private sector should be getting paid, which
Yeah.
is 2010 to 2025, it's government who took over. So it's government getting paid now. It's government getting paid the 15%. It's not the private sector anymore. Since government bought the bond, 80% of it, then they're getting the windfall. It's not us.
It's not you. So what does MRTC earn from all of this today?
Right now, nothing.
No, really?
Yeah, it all goes up to the bondholders. MRTC does not own anything anymore.
So MRTC has no revenues.
No, it has no revenues
But how
except
do you
the
pay
bonds.
salaries?
Actually, all the operations are with
Government.
the government, so we really have no overhead in MRTC. There is some overhead in the holding company right now, which is MRT Holdings.
Yeah.
So that's where we basically have some engineers and some
Yeah.
technical people.
So where do you get the funding for that?
Basically from equity that's left over from the original budget.
Okay, so this doesn't look like a good business proposition on
No,
your
it's not.
end.
It's a very, very long-term, 25-year investment with a 15% return
That you never got.
that has been assigned to the bondholders, which government bought, and which is now getting paid to the government, to the
Okay.
Land Bank and DBP.
Now, in the year 2000, you already had proposed MRTC to buy new trains.
Yes.
Then you had also proposed in 2004. You also proposed in 2008. And the DOTC then did not agree to MRTC buying new trains.
Right.
Why is that?
You know, I'm not sure because for one reason or another, we never really had an approval from the OTC for reasons probably known to them only.
Yeah.
We have been trying to upgrade the system, improve the system, add more trains.
Under the contract, are you supposed to be the one to buy the new trains?
Under the contract, we have the right to supply new trains.
Yeah. You have the right to first refusal.
Yes,
okay.
and which we did. So we kept on offering government almost every other year. No?
Yeah.
But the OTC never acted on it. And so up to now, we haven't had the new trains. And finally, in 2010, we went into a cooperation agreement with the MVP group, MPIC, no? Metro Pacific.
Yeah.
Again, to offer new trains, to upgrade and to improve.
But what contract did you get into with the MVP group?
It's a cooperation agreement between our group, the shareholders, the owners of MRTC, and Metro Pacific to basically come up with a new system, new trains, and upgrades. No?
But then is that allowed under the bylaws? Could you do that?
Yes, yes, definitely. And by the way, this was at no cost to government.
Okay.
All the trains, all the upgrades, all the improvements at no cost to government.
But if government already practically owns, I mean, the operations of MRTC, what is the logic and the power of you getting into a cooperation agreement with the MVP group?
Well, precisely, our proposal was to add trains, improve the system, do the upgrades, and take over the operation.
I see. That was it. You wanted to take over
the
with
operations.
the MVP group?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the last proposal we had.
But to take over the operations, you would have to buy out government.
They would have to approve it.
They would have to only?
And, yes,
okay,
just approve it because there was no financial need from their part.
Okay, now what happened there?
Well, the proposal is still pending. There's been no answer from the OTC, and so it has not been acted upon.
Now, in one of your court hearings, you had said that when you were proposing to DOTC, I'm presuming this started in the year 2000, not yet the current secretary, was this to buy new trains. They suggested to you that they wanted second-hand trains that you didn't agree to. Is this true?
That's true. In 2004, we had a proposal to, again, buy 48 brand new trains.
Who was the secretary then?
Oh, my God. I forget. But this was during the GMA days.
Okay.
And I believe it was Larry Mendoza, Secretary Mendoza at that time. And we got the NEDA approval, actually.
To buy new trains?
To buy new trains.
Because the riding capacity then had reached its required peak of more than 350,000 passengers a day.
Which was the requirement of NEDA before.
Yes, yes.
So once we hit that, we got the NEDA to approve it. We went back to the OTC and said, okay, we're ready to buy the trains. And at that point, they changed their mind and they said, why buy new trains? Let's buy second-hand trains.
Yeah.
And we didn't agree with that.
Now, why does the government do this? What does it say in the contract? Do we honor PPP contracts?
Well...
I mean, do we honor any... What does it say? I'm just curious.
Well, in our BLT agreement, in our PPP contract with government, it says we have the right to upgrade, to add trains, to improve the system, and all they have to do is approve it in accordance with the terms of the PPP contract,
so,
which we did.
Which you did. But are you telling me now none of the terms of the PPP contract that you had signed with FDR then were followed by government?
It was not followed because they did not approve our proposal, which was in accordance with our agreement.
Yeah.
Yes. And so in that sense, government failed to follow the provisions of the contract.
Okay. I have a good question here. He's watching right now. Senator Cheese Escudero, how much did MRT Holdings get when they securitized the economic interest?
Well, MRT Holdings didn't get anything.
Really?
Yes. Actually, the securitization happened on the shareholder level. So it were the shareholders who actually securitized it. In our case, and when I say our case, the Phil Estate Group, we basically used it to retire debt. And at that time, since this was early in the year...
When you say retire debt, to pay debt.
Yeah, to pay...
Yeah, no technical
corporate,
terms.
To corporate borrowings,
So of course, how much did you get?
Of course, we borrowed money to put into the system, right? $190 million equity from all of us. So in 2003, in our case, and I can only speak for our case, we actually had to sell the bond at about 10 to 15 cents to the dollar.
Yeah.
Highly discounted.
Yeah.
to retire debt. So basically, that's where most of our proceeds went.
Yeah.
And of course, each shareholder did, a lot of them actually retired debt. I know Ramcar did, I know the National Bookstore Group did, so most did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the DOTC has purchased, I want you to correct me as I go along,
Sure.
48 new coaches, and the prototypes will be arriving next year.
Yes. Yes.
You filed a court case
Yes.
that it should be MRTC who should first buy these coaches and
Right.
supply
Yes.
these coaches because that's under the contract.
Yeah.
You lost?
Yes, actually the case was about two things.
Yeah.
First of all, we filed the TRO because we have pending proposals to supply government trains at no cost to government, as I said, which they had not responded to. And then all of a sudden they turn around and buy new trains. So first of all, you know, you haven't even responded to our proposals, which is in accordance with our agreements, and then you turn around and buy new trains. So that was the first issue. Secondly, and more importantly for me, the most important thing is the purchase of the new trains should be coordinated with us. We own the system. We want to be sure that those trains are compatible with our system. There have been cases in other countries where trains arrive, it goes on the system, and it actually burns the system because it's
Really?
not compatible. Yeah.
Okay.
There are other instances that I know of, such as the one in Australia, where trains from China were actually turned back because the grade of steel was not up to par. No?
Yeah.
So we want to be sure that, number one, these trains are compatible so they don't destroy our system, and number two, that they're safe.
Yeah.
And we can only do that if we're in the loop in the purchase, but we're not in the loop. We had no knowledge of the purchase. We were not basically a party to the purchase. And most importantly, we found out that the manufacturer of these new trains, this is going to be their first double articulated LRV.
So this is their first try?
Yeah, this is their first. It's a guinea pig. It's a first try. Yeah. So that kind of worries us, right?
Yeah.
It's a manufacturer doing the trains for the first time, and so you're not sure what's going to come of it. And it's completely uncoordinated with us, and it will be put in our system, and hopefully it will work.
Yeah. Now, I think the big concern that I'm getting here is, well, unfortunately, Secretary Abaya is abroad with President
Yes.
Aquino, is that the private sector built the system.
Yes.
So the private sector owns the system.
Correct.
The infrastructure, the rails,
Right.
the whole system that's MRT 3.
Right.
But you have government operating the system.
Correct.
And you are not talking.
Not as much as we should be.
Yes,
We're
you
not, yeah.
clearly are not, you're not planning together.
Yes, and
You're not.
Correct, and that's we should work together.
Yeah.
And that's all we want.
And what's worrisome to taxpayers with this is that the trains are delayed as it is,
Yeah.
and yet it's not coordinating with the builder
Correct.
of the trains,
Correct.
which is you.
Correct. Correct.
So what is coming in 2015? Do you know what's coming?
The new train, you mean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure because we've never been in the loop. We've never been consulted, and they never got our approvals on it. I wish they did, because so then we can work together to make it a better system. No?
Now, how does this affect, before I move on to more detail after the break, how does this affect business in general? I mean, if with every single president, PPPs, build, operate, transfer, build lease agreements are so important to have the business sector come in, government doesn't have the money, please build this,
Right.
you'll earn this much.
Right.
And then along the way, this major complication happens where it's not appealing to the private sector.
Well, yes. I guess it sends the wrong signal to the PPP program that when private sector has done its part, has finished the project on time,
Yeah, meaning
on
built
budget.
it,
Yeah, we built it.
yeah,
We
built
finished
it.
it. You know, we put $190 million of equity in it. We raised financing for it. And then in the end, government is not honoring the PPP terms
Yeah.
of the agreement. No, so that sends the wrong signal, I guess,
Yeah.
to business sector.
I'm curious, would government want to earn from the trains? I mean, just not this government, but in the past. For example, why would the DOTC I want to ask you, then, be interested to be the one to buy the trains, when in the contract it should be MRTC. What would be the reason they'd be interested, you think?
Well,
Unless you earn money from buying the trains and you have some sort of kickback. Because why would I want the problem to buy the trains if the private sector who built it has the contract to buy the trains?
Well, precisely our point. We have the contract to buy the trains using private money.
Yeah, private money, and yet...
And then government doesn't put any money in it. And furthermore, the last proposal was on a strict BOT, build, operate, transfer. We raise the money from the private sector, we pay ourselves from revenues, and government doesn't pay us anything. So,
and yet government insists to buy.
To buy the trains, yeah.
Yeah, with government money.
With government money.
So why do you think?
Well, I'm not sure. That's the big question.
Because it doesn't make sense if the MVP group is in,
yes,
and then they're willing to spend, private money is willing to spend
yes,
for the trains and improve the system.
Yeah.
And then you have DOTC now insisting
yeah,
for a $2.5 billion, is that correct? Did I hear right? Improvement of the system.
right.
When the MVP group and yourself can spend for it.
Yes, actually on the MPIC proposal, private sector was willing to put $350 million to improve the system and buy the trains.
Yeah.
Not only that, private sector was willing to actually take over the subsidy. Government pays close to $7 billion a year in subsidy.
Yeah.
Private sector was willing to take over that subsidy.
Of the passenger tickets?
Of the...
Yeah,
of
that's
the
that includes passenger fares.
Yes, passenger fare. The difference between the cost and the passenger fares is a subsidy of 7 billion pesos.
Yeah.
That government spends every year. In the proposal, private sector was willing to take that over so that government would not spend 7 billion a year anymore.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and take over the
When
operation.
was this? When did you propose this?
In 2010.
With the MVP group?
Yes.
And then in his snub?
Well, they have not replied, responded to it.
Have they even read it?
I'm not sure because I haven't talked to them about it. They haven't discussed it with us.
So this is part of the proposal, huh? The
Yes.
private sector paying for subsidy,
Yes.
paying for new trains, paying for a new system,
Right.
no government money.
Right.
Walang pumansin sa inyo.
Wala.
What did MVP say?
Ayun, he went to Spain and watched basketball.
Okay. All right, we're going to continue our conversation up next. Thus, MRT Holdings Chairman John Sobrepena, Bob Sobrepena.
Yeah.
So, where it's coming to right now, very quickly, if the government wants to buy out MRTC, that would mean the private owners, right?
Yes.
Because right now they're controlling the economic interest,
Correct.
80% of the bonds.
Correct.
How much would it be for government to buy out right now? That would mean the share of the Ayala Group, National Bookstore Group, Ramcar Group, Sobrepena Group, that whole group.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure the price is something we can discuss. I'll have to get back to the board and my partners
Yeah.
and the shareholders on that. But, you know, we're willing to talk.
MRTH claims the value of MRT3, meaning the rails, the system,
Yes.
the hard infrastructure is at $2.5 billion.
That is the claim in Singapore.
In Singapore.
In arbitration.
Okay, in arbitration though.
Yes.
So, but you're saying government hasn't even offered and asked you.
They haven't talked to us. And I'm sure if they did, we'd talk to them about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima, I think, was willing to put 53 billion pesos, this was part of the unprogrammed funds, to buy back MRT.
Yeah.
Was that to buy you or no? Where is that
No,
53 billion going?
I believe, Karen, the 53 billion is just enough to buy the bonds that are owned by DBP and Land Bank. That's all.
But why would Finance Secretary Cesar Purisima offer 53 billion to buy the bonds that government already owns? If DBP and Land Bank
Yes.
own those bonds and there are 9 members of government in the board, why would we spend 53 billion to buy back something they already own?
Precisely. I think that's the big question is you have 53 billion that is going to be used to buy bonds that already are owned by the GFIs, DBP Land Bank. I would rather see the 53 billion used somewhere else, such as improving the MRT system, for instance.
Yeah.
Right? Or maybe the Yolanda victims down south.
Yeah.
That goes a long way in other areas.
So why would government do that, spend 53 billion pesos to buy their own bonds? Why do you think?
I believe there's a technicality in DBP Land Bank owning those bonds that they're trying to correct.
Okay.
So maybe there's a technical issue that they're trying to correct, and that's the most I can think of.
Now, Bob, who is to blame for the state of MRT3 today? Be honest. The fact that there are now it's deteriorated, we are lacking in trains.
Okay.
Who's to blame?
Okay, let me put it this way. The Sumitomo Corporation and Mitsubishi Corporation of Japan designed the system, they built the system, and they maintained the system for us through 12 years. And in those 12 years, we never saw any of these incidents, right? We lost a lot, and this is what you call single point of responsibility. Design, build, and maintain, okay? And two large companies, Sumitomo Mitsubishi. I think the problem started when they took out Sumitomo Mitsubishi. So kung bumili ka ng Toyota,
they is the OTC.
Government, kung bumili ka ng Toyota, in the start, okay, nasa kasa yon. Ngayon linipat mo na sa ibang, wala na sa kasa, no? Hindi na authorized distribution.
Yun ang nangyari.
Ganyan ang nangyari. Napunta na sa local, and that's where all the problems started.
Okay. All right,
so,
that's one.
That's
so the
one
maintenance provider you're saying is very important. That's number one.
That's the most important.
Did government mismanage that?
Well, government, actually, the maintenance provider, it's his job to be sure that those trains run all the time, availability is there, that accidents don't happen. You know, that's a coordination between the operator and the maintenance provider.
Yeah, but it was government who decided to remove it from Sumitomo and Mitsubishi.
So I believe that was the first mistake.
Okay, so of government. Next.
Yes. And
the trains, number of trains.
Well, this is the more important one. The maintenance provider, to my knowledge, from what I've heard, has not given the amount of spare parts needed, okay, for these trains to keep on running.
You mean APT?
Yes.
APT Global.
PH Transit.
Okay.
So we have a problem with spare parts, which is why you have breakdowns.
Today?
Today.
You have no spare parts?
I believe there's not enough spare parts to run all the systems.
But the weird part is you, MRTC, who built it, have no say in the maintenance
We have no
today?
say. Which is why we brought in the MTR of Hong Kong. The MTR of Hong Kong will do an audit, will tell us exactly where the system is right now.
Okay, all right, moving on. So who's to blame for the trains? The fact that we are lacking in trains?
It can only be the maintenance provider.
Or government?
The government-appointed maintenance provider. Because it's government doesn't own the company, no? It's a private sector company. So they should do a better job at maintaining.
Maintaining, but what about ordering more trains?
Ordering more trains should be government. And if they had approved our proposals...
Blame,
yeah, if they had approved our proposals in 2010, we would have more trains now. Everything would be upgraded and improved.
So, in 2010, who was the DOTC secretary then? Was it Secretary Manrojas?
Let's see, 2010, I think in the beginning it was Secretary Ping de Jesus.
Ping de Jesus,
yes.
Okay. So from
And
Secretary Ping de Jesus to Secretary Manrojas to Secretary Abaya,
yes.
None of them reviewed any of your proposals?
No, I believe they reviewed it.
Okay.
It's just that they did not approve it.
But did they get back to you and say, we're not approving it?
In the time of Ping, they did not. In the time of Mar, they did not. And in the time of Abaya, now, I think lately, the last I heard just from the press is that he disapproved it.
Okay, but not to you?
No, never wrote us, never talked to us, never negotiated with us.
How would you describe this conduct? I mean, you are the owner of MRT.
Yes. Well, I'm not sure. You know, I mean, that's exactly our question. What we want is to dialogue with government so that we can help each other improve this system, improve the spare parts condition, improve the maintenance, bring about new trains together.
Yeah.
Because that's how it's envisioned in the agreement, and it has to be. We own it, they operate. We have to work together. And that's all we want, is to work together with the OTC.
Okay.
But apparently it takes two to tango, no?
All right. Now, very quickly, this is quite interesting. In rail systems all over the world, including Hong Kong, the railway doesn't earn. Well, Hong Kong started to earn recently. The MTR just recently, but they earn through advertising.
Yes.
Now, The problem is the advertising of MRT is under another company. It is MRT DevCo.
Correct.
That you spun off from
Yes.
MRTC.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
That was a requirement of the lenders of the project. Bank of Tokyo Mitsubishi, who funded the project, made it a requirement that the project company, MRTC, would only have the phase 1 of MRT3 in it, nothing else. So we spun off the development rights and the property rights to another company called MRT DevCo. So that's why it's separate. It was a condition of the lenders at that time when we were doing it.
So who owns MRT DevCo?
The same shareholders.
The same shareholders.
Exactly the same shareholders.
So if government buys back technically MRTC,
Yes.
the advertising of MRT is MRT Holdings. You are not selling that.
No, it's not included. It's another company.
It's another
MRT
company.
DevCo, yes.
Yeah. So doesn't government lose naman with this particular deal?
No, it's gaining back a huge asset. You know, that asset alone, the MRT3 system, has a value of about $700 million. You know, that's exactly what they're trying to take over and buy. And the advertising rights and the development rights were basically the reason why private sector went into it.
Yeah.
We didn't go into it because of the 15%.
Yeah.
Earning 15% in 25 years, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody would invest under those terms. We went into this project precisely because of the advertising and development rights, which is now with MRT DevCo. Now we finished the system per contract. We delivered it to government. They're operating it now and maintaining it. And of course, you know, for our part, we get the development rights.
Yeah. Okay. Now, if government offers to buy MRTC, how much would you be willing to sell it for?
That's something we have to get together with my partners, the Ayalas, Ramcar, National Bookstore. But, you know, we're open to it. We just have to talk. I guess they just have to come to us and talk to us, and I think we'll work something out.
Will it be better if the private sector takes over MRT3, you feel?
Yes. Under the last proposal we gave, definitely better because, again, at no cost to government. We can do it faster. Number two, we take over a subsidy that's costing government $7 billion a year now. So that means taxpayers from Mindanao, Visayas, Northern Luzon are paying for the system at $7 billion a year. If private sector comes in, we take over that subsidy. That's a savings to government. Okay, so not to mention the $53 billion that wouldn't have to be purchased anymore or spent.
Okay.
So that's a lot of savings for government.
All right. Last word, sir. I think that you wanted also to speak because it's, I mean, information out in the media you felt was already unfair or sometimes incorrect.
Yes. Yes, all I'd like to say is, you know, the MRTC project came about because government needed this mass transport project. You know, it pains us to see the long lines now because that's exactly what we wanted to solve during those times. The cost is not exorbitant as people may say it is because at the same time we were doing this, government was borrowing at 18%. And we were doing it at 15%. And of course, last, what I'd like to say is, you know, we in the private sector want to work with government. We want to make the system, our priority is to make it safe now.
But clearly they don't want to work with you. They're not talking to you.
They're not talking to us. And so this is really what I want to say, and maybe to reach out to government. Let's work together. Let's make the system safe as it was in the past. Let's make it more efficient. Let's take away the long queues on EDSA. And private sector is willing to do anything, bend backwards even, to accomplish this with government.
Okay, all right. On that note, Bob Sobrepena, thank you for coming to the show. I really appreciate you trusting Head Start.
Thank you.
That's Head Start today. Replay of this interview at 6 p.m. tonight, 4:30 a.m. tomorrow throughout the day. Thank you for watching. We'll be tweeting parts of the interview. Have a good day, everyone. Stay informed. Stay on ANC.